for everybody's hometown. Prescott is my hometown and has been for 40 years. This is where my children were born and where they were raised. They went through the public schools all 12 years, and several of my grandchildren are growing up here now. It's a wonderful community and a great quality of life. It's a great place to raise a family and to make a life. But with the challenges of the last few years, our hometown is struggling a bit. City revenues are still down significantly from previous years. Businesses have closed. The unemployment rate here locally is still persistently high, higher than the statewide rate, higher than the national average. Schools are definitely struggling with budgets and so forth, and our youth have particular problems. It's very difficult for young people in the community to stay in the community, find a good job with a living wage, and be able to raise families here. It's time to step up the leadership. We can do better, we have to do better if we're going to build a strong future for our children, our grandchildren, and future generations. I'll just mention a couple of things. I think water is something we need to do better on. I think open space is something we need to do better on. And I think that long-range planning we need to do better. It's time to step up the leadership. Thanks.
Mayor Kirkendall.
Thanks, Mal. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the opportunity to Prescott has another slogan besides everybody's hometown. It's where it all began. And 4 years ago, this room is where it all began. And many of you were here at that event, and I've appreciated the support that I've had from this organization, this group, for 4 years. And I hope that I can continue to have your support. 2 years ago, 4 years ago, before I go there, Jan, thank you for mentioning our 19 guys. It has been a tough week, and we've managed to be involved in visiting with almost all of the family, and universally, the first thing they say is what a wonderful town. The hospitality, even under these circumstances, has been fantastic. And they all promise that they'll come back again under different circumstances. And that says a lot about for our community. That aside, when I ran against Jack Wilson, there was a very distinct difference in the way we did things. And I think today, it will be obvious to you that there'll be a very distinct differences that Ms. Bell and I have, because we walk to a different drummer. I have been a conservative all my life. I'm still going to be. I ran my business conservatively. You have to take in more money than you spend, or you don't survive. And that's the philosophy that we have. Where do you go, Mal?
All right. I think the gauntlet has been thrown.
Good.
All right, so we're going to start with Lindsay's opening comments about we can do better at water. Lindsay, what is it we can do better about water?
One of the things I've been concerned about recently on the water issue is the recent conversations.
And Lindsay, I have had a request that you stand if you don't mind, and you can come to the podium if you'd like, or stand right there.
Okay. I can wander around too, I hope. Recent articles in the newspaper have talked about the water issue and how all of the communities, including the city of Prescott, on this side of Mingus Mountain, are hesitant to run the water model, and that they think it should be refined. Whereas all of the communities on the other side of the mountain, in the Verde Valley, Clarkdale, Cottonwood, Jerome, and so on, want to run the water model. At a time when we should be having more conversations with our neighbors about water and trying to forge regional water solutions to the water problems of the future, we're having fewer conversations. And in those conversations, we tend to be emphasizing the divisions between us and the differences between us instead of our commonalities. I think we need to do better in that regard.
I love that conversation. The question is, to answer it, how much time do we have, Mel?
No time limit.
Okay.
You say that after you hand him the microphone. Okay.
Hour and a half. Okay, let's try to limit this to 2 minutes. How's that?
We can do that.
Sounds good.
The water model that is so misconceived is purely the start of a model. This was funded by the state, by the communities, some federal money, but we are taking that water model. It's the start of what we're doing. We have just committed. We have an 8 to 10 year agreement with our friends in Prescott Valley who we'll be sharing our water with, and Salt River Project, to fund a complete scientific study that's going to take 8 to 10 years. This water model is the start of that piece of paper when it's delivered. It has nothing to do with our ultimate result. And even the geologist, and I talked to one this morning, says by itself, that model proves nothing. And so we're taking it to the next level. We've allocated about $500,000 a year from the city. Salt River Project is paying a third also, as well as Prescott Valley. So in 4 or 5 years, when we start seeing some results, and we have wells now in the Big Chino, that the equipment will be coming in a couple of weeks that's going to start monitoring those wells so we can get some good data and supplement the model that exists now. So there's nothing wrong with the model. It was just a start. And we're going to finish that project, and when we're done, we'll know exactly where we are with scientific data to tell us how much water that we can use. What I think our responsibility is to make sure that we always provide enough water at the Paulden Gate that historically has went down the Verde River. What the other side does with that water, we have no control over. And they're wasting probably as much water as we're using. There's 7 different organizations in the Verde Valley that have ditches, and they have prior rights even to Salt River Project. Okay.
Right, Lindsay, would you like to add anything to that?
Just a couple of things. I'm concerned not only about the status of the water model and how quickly we will begin to get the information from that to inform our decision making, but I also worry about the other pieces of water management. What are we doing on rainwater harvesting? Where's our plan for mitigation? The Upper Verde watershed is one of the most important rivers in the country, one of the most threatened rivers in the country, and it's the last perennial, year-round running river in Arizona. When we start pumping from the Big Chino, it will decrease the flows to the Verde. We need to be sure that we're doing some mitigation, because we don't want to destroy that watershed. We want to maintain the riparian habitat, and we want to maintain the Upper Verde and the flows into the Verde. It's home to some endangered species, and it's certainly habitat for a lot of fish, birds, and other types of wildlife. So I'm concerned about no mitigation plan. I'm concerned about no plan for reaching safe yield. The goal is to reach safe yield by the year 2025, and I don't see any plans in place to do that. So water conservation, mitigation, safe yield, those are areas that we need to address and need to address right now.
All right, well, you're getting an idea how this works. The first one to respond, 2 minutes, then 2 minutes, And if the first one wants another 2 minutes, the second one gets another 2 minutes. But this is last round, so there's 2 counterpoints. 2 minutes, Marvin.
Let me assure you that there are plans in place for all of the things that have been discussed here today. It's maybe we do a lousy job of getting information out, but I will assure you that every issue the lady speaks about is being discussed on a regular basis. We are doing a great job in conservation, a great job in conservation. The mitigation, that will come as a result of the studies. The purpose of the water ranch was to replace water that we might, to reach safe yield, we've got to replace some water in the Little Chino. And that's the purpose, part of the purpose of the Big Chino, is to replace that water. So I'll assure you that if you want to come over and get a complete water briefing, you will find that the city of Prescott is very well prepared. We have as bright a lady as there is that used to work for ADWR that runs that part of our business, and rest assured, and one point, at present consumption, in our existing water portfolio, we can handle a population of 70,000 people. We're 40,000 people. In 1964, we were 12,000 people. So you do the math, and even in the worst case scenario, we've probably got 15 years if we don't do anything. So let's don't let this fear get a hold of us. The city is well prepared. We are moving ahead, and we have the funding available and the partners to take this to the next level.
Okay, you first on the next one. Open space. How's the city handling the open space issue right now?
Want it from me?
Yeah, you go first. Go ahead and angle the mic straight in. I think we'll pick up better.
Sure we can. This better?
Yeah.
Okay. Open space, I was not on the council when this was approved by the voters, but our attorney tells me what it said was the city can spend up to $40 million to acquire open space. And different councils have spent different amounts of money. We're coming out of a 4-year, I call it a money crunch. It was real. And we're coming out very well now. We're solid as a rock. We have money in the bank, and we're paying our bills on time. So we've set aside $500,000 each year in the budget for open space acquisition. It has not been spent. It does not carry over. There have been a couple of small expenditures, but the council is elected to use their good judgment, looking at existing budgets, and decide how the money is spent. This council, my councils, and I'm proud of every one of them, we've had as good a council as I think you could ever put together. Good, solid business sense, and they use good judgment. We're very frugal, and we have a lot of institutional knowledge that goes, it really helps. But we have not spent much money on open space, but there's no dictate that says we have to. I have saw other priorities, and we're surrounded by open space. I spent yesterday afternoon at a funeral out in Granite Basin. We have open space everywhere you want to look. What I have seen is some of the acquisitions of open space has to improve somebody else's view shed. They don't want anything built on it so that it don't change their view, and to me that's the wrong purpose. If we want to talk about Granite Dells, I'll be happy to, because there's much more to that than what you've ever heard or read.
13 years ago, the voters approved a proposition to spend money on streets and for open space. It was actually the second proposition regarding streets. The original proposition was in 1995 to fund 1% sales tax and use that money for streets. The original program was for a 10-year period. Just 5 years in, the voters said, we need to spend a little bit of that money on open space, and it's a good thing. And we put a proposition to the voters to spend up to 40% of what was projected to be the income from the 1% sales tax, and put that on the ballot, and the voters went for it. They said, yes, we want to extend this tax for a 15-year period, and we want to spend some of that money on open space. Unfortunately, the proposition didn't specify the amount of money in the proposition. It also left out the word maintenance. So those were a couple of oversights in the language of the proposition. But soon after it was passed by the voters, the City Council at the time passed an ordinance and a number of resolutions promising to spend $40 million, up to $40 million on open space, and that was the projection of approximately 40% of the anticipated revenue. The revenue has come in much higher than was originally projected, so there's been more money available over the 13 years. And in 13 years, the councils, including the current council, have spent a total of just under $17 million. In the process, we've lost out on critical properties, like the Doggy property. And the council recently directed the city manager to send a letter to the owner of the Granite Dells resort property, which has always been on the top of everybody's list for acquisition, and said thanks, but no thanks. That's a problem.
Lindsay's right on the city manager was instructed to send a letter to the owner of the Granite Dells property. Because the conversation was taken in executive session, I'm certainly not at liberty to tell you what the price was that the property was offered to the city. But it was a lot of money, more than this council thought that we could spend, because it would have taken half of the amount that it costs us to run the fire department every year. But let's talk about that $17 million, or 16 point something. It costs $8 million a year to run a fire department here. You're talking about the money that was spent was enough to fund the entire fire department for 2 years. Is that the right place to use the money, particularly in a downturn market? And let's talk about the downturn market. You've been told that we're not coming out of the recession. Fiscal year 2010 to fiscal year 2013 that we just finished, we have increased the sales in the city of Prescott by $257 million from 2010 to the finished year. Our tourism program has turned our sales tax around, and it's all in black and white. It's online, and there's no secrets to it. So if anybody wants to look at the progress that the city has made in the last 3 years, coming on 4 years, I'd welcome to share the numbers with you, because I'm very proud of what this council has done. We saw the opportunities, we took advantage of the opportunities, and it's paid off, and we're moving very well at this moment.
Last time?
I would point out that the 1% sales tax for streets and open space can only be spent on those two items. Can't be spent in another part of the budget, can't be spent for the fire department, can't be spent for police, can't be spent for Parks and Rec, only for streets and for open space. We've only spent a little less than $17 million in 13 years out of the $40 million that was pledged to be spent. And as I said before, we've passed on a lot of wonderful properties. The current property that the city has so far said no to The appraised value of that property, it's 83 acres, the appraised value of that property is $5.3 million. That is comparable to other property nearby, similar size, similar typographical features. This particular property has been on the top of the list for acquisitions because it not only has the landmarks and the beautiful topography of the Dells, it also has historical significance because it's where the Granite Dells Resort was. A lot of people remember swimming out there and going to the dance hall. The property owner offered it to the city at $4.3 million, $1 million less than the appraised value. He also has agreed to deed the 3 acres that have the historic buildings on it and donate that to a coalition of agencies in town who want to run a visitor center and a museum. The property not only is historically significant, but it's also at the nexus of our trail system. It would connect Watson and Willow Lakes.
We do budget. We budget 5 years ahead. And in many cases, the anticipation is even out further than that. So, you know, I would welcome, we need to do a little meeting and really get into some of the things that the city does do, and it does it very well. And but sometimes we just don't get the credit for it.
Here. How are we doing there, Malcolm? Sound okay?
Trying to do that, there's some,
Reverb.
trying to adjust the gain on the reverb.
Yeah, there's a little buzzing. So we'll just move forward and.
So I'll have this thing shut off in no time.
Of course, everybody knows I can talk loud so we can get by it, and I think everybody at this table can too, right?
Yep.
We have to. Okay, we are going to start with the first question. Now remember, 1 minute. Yes, ma'am.
You calling on me?
No, do you want me to?
Yes, I'd like to.
Okay, well, we're going to do the questions first, and then when we afterwards, if we have time, then we'll do some stuff from the audience. Is that
I want to
okay?
ask you a question.
Okay, I have some prepared questions, and then if we have time, we'll do some from the audience, okay?
Oh,
Cool,
yeah.
thank you. Okay, we're going to start with questions. Remember, you have 1 minute, so get to the point very, very quickly. I'm going to rotate. I'll be starting with Lynn Scarmato first with the first question, and then we'll rotate along. So the first question is, ready? Ready with the timer? Okay. Residents and business owners are up in arms regarding the halfway houses in Prescott. What is your solution? Starting with Mr. Scarmato.
It's one of the most difficult problems that we're facing. You all are aware that in 1998, under President Carter, the Fair Housing Act was passed. And in that act, it stated that people with like disabilities have to be treated as a family. So it totally changed what a definition of a family was. Prior to that, it was anyone related by blood or marriage or adoption living in the same household was a family. So under the new guidelines, they pretty much took zoning away from communities to where communities could put restrictions on where some of these facilities are. A lot of them are unlicensed. It's a very profitable business. The opportunities for the city are very limited when you look at the fact that within the last couple of weeks, the government declared that obese people are a disability. So when you look at all of the various categories, nobody's concerned about 8 old ladies, but they are concerned about an alcohol or a drug abuse.
Thank you. I would suggest standing so the people in the back can see
So
you.
we're going to go this way?
We're going this way, yep. So you're next, Greg.
I'll
1
take
minute.
over for Lynn. In short, the city's hands are tied at this point in time about regulating just group homes. The solution is possibly, because you've got federal and state laws that the city cannot supersede. They can kind of tweak them or do something of that nature, but to absolutely stop the group homes, it's nearly an impossibility. Now, what you can do is possibly what the city attorney has suggested, maybe limiting so much in a density level. But the answer is not an easy answer.
Thank you very much. We'll come over here.
Ellie Lamarck. I worked for the Minnesota Department of Health for 30 years and surveyed group homes were among the licensed and sometimes certified facilities we certify. And in Minnesota, as well as apparently the model we're using from California, you certainly can have zoning restrictions for certain homes. You can have licensure requirements, business license, health license, different types of licenses depending on the type of facility. And you can work towards buffering to make sure we don't have ghettos of group homes in one neighborhood. And I know our city attorney has brought in a model for the council to look at, and it sounds like a very good model for homes. Right now, over 8 have to be in a zoned area for multiple housing, but we're looking at reducing it to 6, which I think would be a very smart move. But I also think we need to encourage looking at the buffering so that we don't have ghettos of group homes in some of our communities and lowering home values. Certainly disabled people have a right to live in our communities, and that's something we want to encourage.
Thank you, Ally.
Sorry, I didn't
Alan,
see the
you're
stop
next.
sign.
That's all right. I figured out a nice, polite way to do it.
Oh,
Just stand
good.
behind you and tap you on the
Thank
back.
you.
My solution would start with Karen, to get the state to require these facilities to be licensed. When you have that, then you have more control over what they're doing, what type of facility they are. You have lots of abilities with regard to the health codes to enforce. To me, we want to ensure that the rehab homes, the ones for the drug and alcohol, are the ones we concentrate on, because those are the ones the community is most feared about. We don't want to affect, in my opinion, those type of group homes in which we have the elderly taken care of, in which we have those with mental disabilities being taken care of. There's been no complaints I've ever heard about those facilities being a problem in a residential area. We need to start with the rehab facilities. Now, what the question was about halfway homes, and as far as I know about halfway facilities, they have to do with how prisoners are taken out of the jails, put into a community in order to transition.
Thank you. Steve?
Well, there's a couple of different avenues I think that you could take. Number one, I think you start with the facility that offers the benefits. That facility, when you come to be part of that facility, they should keep enough money available to that if you fall out of the program, that they send you back to where you came from, so you don't become a drain on the community once you fall out of the program. Because what's happened is people that are in programs, once they step out of the program, they're released from the clinics that they're at, and then they become a drag on the community using services and stuff out there and cause crime and those kind of things. So I think you need to start with the actual facilities that offer the benefits. And then you need to look at, number one, health issues in these houses, of how it affects the living conditions within that house, whether they have enough toilet facilities, whether they have fire alarms, how they're equipped, and how they are protected in the neighborhood. I think those are the 2 places that you start, because law dictates that's about the only thing that you can do.
Great, thank you. That one there. Steele, there's anything? No? Oh, I'm sorry, Jean still needs to be started. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you. I think Councilman Scamato hit the nail on the head. Legally, there are some restrictions on what the city can do in terms of regulating halfway houses. And we have to be very careful that we are not restricting out people who really need services and live in group homes, the disabled, the elderly, foster children. What really is the problem? Why are people up in arms? We need to focus on the specifics of the problem. Is it more fear, perception of danger, or is there an actual crime, an actual drain on the community? I have not seen that evidence yet, and if I were sitting on the council, I would ask for it. I would ask for the staff to prepare a report to the council to let us know exactly what the problem is so we can identify how to address it.
Okay, all of you did a great job. Thank you. The second question, we are going to be starting with Mr. Greg Lozelle here to my left, and here is your question. Ready? Much discussion and debate has been going on regarding Prescott's Antelope Hills Golf Course and Restaurant. Do you believe this facility should be kept open as a municipal course, and how should it be handled financially?
I've said this a few times, this has been brought up to me. The golf course in itself is an obligation to the folks around there that bought homes around that golf course. So we have to respect the folks that have already bought homes in that area. Now, having said that, does the city have to run the course? No, it doesn't. But if we are going to put it out for proposal, it can't be an encyclopedia. You have to come up with a lease. This is your property. This is what you owe us every month. These are the standards that we want to keep it. And then they have to keep it up to that. They're in violation of it. But I think that in the day, the municipal course was very, it was okay for the municipality to hold it. But right now, I don't think we can afford it. So that's what I have to say.
Great. Thank you, Greg.
Oh, you got your own.
Ellie?
Ellie Lomark, and I have an opposing view. The city golf course, Antelope Hills, has been part of Prescott's history for 55 years. It draws tourists here. It's something that brings the community together. It's a wonderful place to have weddings and other benefits out there. And I'll give credit to the mayor and to the council and the city staff. They have come up with a proposal of a public-private partnership, which has, I think, high potential. As long as the city would probably maintain the course, and I don't know about the infrastructure, and we'd certainly have to look at the finances to ensure that there would be some revenue sharing for the city if there is revenue to be gained.
Thank you. Alan?
Yes, keep the course. Yes, try to get into the black. How do we do that? Well, obviously, you try to minimize the expenses. Find ways to bring more golfers in the times it's not used. Use social media to advertise when rates are lower for that particular day in order to get the reservations up and people in. Bring in the funds at that rate. Also, there's excess amount of turf being maintained to a high degree that is not part of the playable area. I think we could look at how that can be reduced, that is the maintenance on that. And I do agree with many of the others that have spoken that we need to look at how we can have a management company run the whole complex, the golf course, the restaurant, the pro shop, the Centennial Center. Of course, we have to obtain from that enough to at least cover the cost of the maintenance, which at this point I think we should maintain in order that the cost is not left to degrade. If the entire cost plus its maintenance was set out for a management company, it could well degrade as has happened in many other locations. Hasn't gone up yet.
Thank you, Alan. Under the wire. Steve, you're next.
Well, the Antelope Hills is an asset for the city of Prescott. The citizens own the land out there, and it's a great facility. I've often envisioned the fact that on 9 holes of the 18-hole golf course on the south side, where it fronts the sand and gravel pit coming off of Larry Caldwell off the bridge, that we do an economic development co-partnership with a hotel resort at the airport. Have casitas, have a resort convention center, and build a new hotel out there, make the 9 holes an executive golf course, do the 18 holes out on the north course, turn it over to a private operation for the management. The city would still do the maintenance to make sure the facility stays in its pristine state that it is today, turn the restaurant over to a private entrepreneur as well as the clubhouse, and the city of Prescott take a percentage and let somebody do it in the private sector.
Very good.
Thank you.
This is going to knock your socks off, but I think I agree in part with Councilman Blair. I think that the golf course is an important public recreation resource that the city should keep, but it's also an opportunity to generate revenues. And the amount of money that the golf course owes to the city really is an accounting artifice. There is a public benefit, and there are many other benefits that the city provides without expecting something in return in terms of dollars. The return is the value that we provide to our citizens. And the value is not just to people who visit and want to use the golf course, play golf. It's to people who live here, and it's also to our high school kids who can get into a recreational opportunity. I think that even though we don't all play golf, we have to remember that the public in general can benefit from this. I'm very open to the idea of partnering with an executive golf course.
Okay.
Well, I've played out there for 30-some odd years, and I got to be pretty good. But it still doesn't correct the problems that the golf courses are having. When I was appointed to be on the ad hoc committee a few months ago to look into getting an RFP for the restaurant, what I found amazed me as a businessman. Labor costs were higher than anywhere else within the city budgets. The labor cost and food costs at the restaurant were way out of line what national averages are. So to answer the question, my position would be put all of the golf course operation, the pro shop, the restaurant, the Centennial Center, into a national company that operates them. In the last 20 years, over 2,400 city munis, which is what Antelope Hills is, have gone to under the management of professional managers. And I think that's what's needed to be done out at Antelope Hills.
Perfect. Thank you, Lynn. You already went. You can't go again. Okay. Third question, and this time we're going to start with Ellie over here, so everybody listen up. Regarding retirement packages for potential city employees, due to the shortage of funds, what are your solutions to meeting current and future long-term obligations?
Well, it's about money, isn't it? I would say what we need to do is focus on increasing and broadening our tax-based system, increasing tourism, especially ecotourism. Our chamber is telling us that 40 to 50% of the people that show up in the tourist office there are here for outdoor recreation. That is a new interest for this town, and it's, I think, credited to the Parks and Rec Department and the expanded trail development that has gone on in the last few years. The Whiskey Row Marathon bike race brought in 15 to 20,000 people here for that weekend. This is an area that would extend the tourist season past summer months into the spring and the fall and increase revenues. We also need to take advantage of greater regional Prescott development and trying to bring corporations here that would bring more jobs and improve the economy.
Thank you. Al?
Well, Ellie, I don't know what else there is for me to say about that. Covered most of the items. You want to provide more general fund revenue, you need to get more sales tax. Of course, the state can always go back and give us the money we deserve, the state share revenue. We need to get that tax base up by having more people spend more money, and that's either by coming here as tourists and increasing the tourist activity here, by having more companies here, so there's more jobs with higher wages, so people spend more, build homes, increase the tax base. What other solutions are there? Well, perhaps if we have a vote of the people and they desire to have a portion of that $0.25 that's going to be lost in 2016 begins from the streets and open space, turning in all the streets at $0.75. You could look at having a portion of that put to the voters to see if that's a way of also increasing the general fund for purposes of having employees.
Thank you.
Question.
Certainly.
I'm not sure, after listening to the last two responses, I'm not sure I understood the question.
Okay. Regarding retirement packages for potential city employees, due to the shortage of funds, what are your solutions to meeting current and future long-term obligations, financial obligations?
I think the first thing you have to do is restructure the retirement system, number one. We're running out of funds because people are living longer. I believe that as an employee of the city of Prescott, the city matches the employee, or not matches, but pays more into the retirement. And based upon the retirement, based upon the percentage of interest, if they put in for 20 years, they should never be able to take out more than 20 years. Because who's paying for that? All of a sudden, when you have people that are taking out of the system for 40 years and they only put in for 20 years, that creates a bottomless pit of not having money to pay future employees. So I think that's the first thing you have to look at. The second thing you need to make sure is you're not overpaying those funds in the first place. And I think that's one that you have to look at as well. But the biggest part is to make sure your fund stays healthy. And across the country, funds aren't healthy because people are living longer and they're taking more out of the system than they put in.
Arizona has one of the best retirement systems in the country. And I think that is because both employees and employers have to put contributions of equal amounts into that system. And it is very well managed by boards of directors. There are 4 different retirement systems for public employees. Most of city employees are on the Arizona State Retirement System. Public safety is on a different retirement system. Elected officials, not in our city, but in the county, are on the elected officials' retirement system. One thing we have to appreciate about retirement pensions for public employees is that they do bring economic stability in our community. You have a constant source of income, there's buying power, people can buy houses, they can stay here, they don't have to go on Medicaid and welfare. So the economic stability is a public benefit.
Employee benefits is what we're talking about. City Council did address this problem within the last couple of 3 months. One of the major problems we found out with the city employee retirement program is that we had employees that were not taking their vacation, they were not using their sick pay whenever they needed their allowances, and they used it as a piggy bank so that at the time that they retired, they had accumulated vacations. Now, companies in the private industry and communities give employees vacation time so they can recharge their batteries and come back to work with a good, fresh outlook, not to save it until the last year of their retirement and then go buy their cabin in the mountains. So we modified the program for new employees that they can't do that certain benefits are going to be agreed to and paid, but they can't accumulate the benefits over a period of time and then take them as one lump sum check. Use it or lose it.
Thank you.
Boy, everybody's answered and used up all the answers. It comes down to the fact we have an obligation to current employees that we have promised them what to pay them. So that one we can't get around, and morally or legally. So we're obligated to pay those folks. And that is through revenue generation. But I have to agree with Steve. You really have to examine future employees and what that model is going to look like. And I have to agree that if you work 20, you get 20. You maybe have to examine what Lynn said, that use it or lose it. We have to look, and this is just not exclusive to Prescott. This is nationwide. This is breaking huge cities right now. So this is a further discussion that can't be answered in 1 minute, but or 45 seconds, and I'm getting ready to say stop. Thank you.
Okay, question number 4. We're going to start with Alan on this one. Ready? Recently, the city of Bisbee voted to approve a local law allowing civil unions for same-sex couples. Mesa, Tempe, and Phoenix are all now considering passing similar ordinances. If the issue is brought before the Prescott Council, what is your opinion and how would you vote on this issue?
I believe my opinion and vote is no.
That was quick. Very good.
That was brief and to the
Do I
point.
get to use up this time? I believe cities that step out and do that are overstepping their bounds. I think it's a state and federal law, and I would subscribe to that, and I don't think the city needs to insert themselves into it.
Thank you, Steve. Jane?
I would approve such a law that would allow civil unions to be recognized marriages among same-sex couples in our city. Although, just like the medical marijuana law, we have state laws and federal laws, state laws that do not allow that. However, we do have to recognize that there is now a federal decision that invalidated DOMA. And so there is a door open to the city to allow this legal possibility.
Thank you. Lynn?
Yes. My understanding of a city councilman is that he establishes the budget for the city manager to operate under and approves the budget and items that are over a certain amount of money throughout the year. And he also sets policy. What we're talking about is a social issue, and I would not like to see it come before the council, and if it did, I'd vote no.
Thank you. Great.
Just like the state, we have to obey the federal constitution, the United States Constitution, and as a city, we'd have to obey the state constitution. I wouldn't want to get in a legal battle, like Steve says, and I would vote no.
Kelly Lomar, I believe the Supreme Court will ultimately be continuing to review this issue, but certainly they're overruling the DOMA provisions as set a new course, and states can certainly review their own policy. I, for one, do not believe in discriminating against any party for any reason whatsoever, and I certainly would support civil union marriages in Arizona.
Thank you, Ellen. Okay, let's go to question number 5, which means we'll be starting with Steve Blair this time. Ready?
Always ready.
Okay. Many city residents and business owners desire a better usage of our Prescott Rodeo grounds, freeing up the downtown area. Congestion and noise are a problem. What are your thoughts on this issue?
Well, my thoughts are to continue forward working on the master plan for the fairgrounds. We use part of open space money to buy the trail system that's on the backside of the fairgrounds. It's a historical marker for the community in the state of Arizona, and it's missing its livelihood out there to generate an economic benefit for the community. And there are a lot of things that can be done out there, not necessarily in downtown Prescott. We are working right now on a master plan. We're working on a feasibility plan. We're working on a maintenance plan. So those things are ongoing. We've only owned the fairgrounds for a couple of years. We have leases in place that we have to be conscious of, and we're continuing to move forward on making it a better place and more activities at the fairground.
Thank you, Stacey.
Well, as the city grows and residential development occurs all in that area, the presence of the rodeo and all of the noisy activity that happens there has an impact on the residents as around it. I understand that it is an historical place, but it's the event that is the history, and it presents the culture, preserves the culture for the community. I think we can find a better place for it, and I would be in favor of looking at better places in the Prescott area to have the rodeo.
Thank you. Lynn?
Well, this is what I have really no interest in. We have a rodeo, it's been here, it's been on a site, it's like buying a house underneath an airport
Understanding the
runway.
question.
The rodeo has been there, they've been operating, it's the world's oldest, it's no secret, and if you can't stand the noise for the 5, 8, 10 days that they operate, then you shouldn't have bought there. Maybe you should have gone out by the airport and had the planes brought it.
Madam Chairman, they're not
I live by the rodeo, and-
they're not understanding the question. They are not understanding the question, Jean, Len, that wasn't the question.
The question
I asked the
is-
moderator to repeat the question.
I will repeat the question here. Many city residents and business owners desire a better usage of the Prescott Rodeo grounds, freeing the downtown area. Congestion and noise are a problem. What are your thoughts?
That was kind of on the mark, to use it other than the rodeo, better usage. And again, I live by the rodeo. I'm grateful that the monster truck rallies are not there anymore, but it was entertaining. I knew what I was buying when I bought around that area. It's a fun place. It's not the most attractive these days, but like Steve says, the city is working on it. I would have to say you would have to select those different events. Maybe you don't have the monster truck or a rodeo every night, but I don't see why we couldn't spread out maybe some sort of craft fair, be sensible to the hours that they're there, maybe not going all to the night. But I'm all for trying to utilize that area.
Great, thank you. And Ellie?
This is not something I've really have heard of from the business community. Certainly it's part of our cultural heritage and we need to preserve it. I think we'd have to look at a lot of competing ideas for finances within the city. Yeah, I think it would be nice to have the grounds a little more up to date with more shaded covering and amenities out there, and that might attract more events that would make the space more usable. I certainly would not be opposed to moving it. Again, it would depend on finances, maybe a regional partnership with some of our neighbors. There could be certainly a better location for the events.
Great, thank you. And Al?
Keep the rodeo at the rodeo grounds. It's that simple. The idea of adding more entertainment, more exhibitions to the area of the rodeo grounds to relieve the downtown area, that's something that can be done. There's also the use for the activities as well as lots of lake for activities. However, what's the problem with the downtown being used so much? It would have to come from the business people. They really see it as a detriment to have all those people there who can shop in that area at the time they're doing everything else around the square. If they think it's a problem, then we need to work on a solution for that. If they don't think it's a problem, use it as much as can be possibly used downtown so people get more shopping. If they go out to the rodeo grounds, they're away from the shopping area that we'd like to see in the downtown.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, and last question here. We're going to start with Jean over here at the end, and then we'll go to the closing. Ready? Spending taxpayers' money is one of the most important things a council is elected to do. What are your priorities in spending? Please list your top 5, starting with the most important first. And we're going to make this quick, so make sure we get this done.
Top 5 would be law enforcement, so that we have a safe community, including fire protection. Number 2 would be planning, so that we can plan well into the future for using our resources and the best uses of land in the city. Number 3 would be spending that on amenities to make this become, or make this stay, a city that's wonderful and stay in the future, provide amenities to all generations. We're on number 4.
Number 5.
Number 5, thank you. Number 5, not to be forgotten, are the public employees. I do feel very strongly that they need to be rewarded for the hard work that they do, particularly our public safety law enforcement.
Great.
Okay, I gotta agree with Jean. I think that one of our major responsibilities is to make sure we've got the dollars to provide for public safety personnel, which currently takes about $20 million out of the general fund in order to pay their salaries and their other benefits and retirement programs. I think the second item would be to make sure that we keep in working order an obligation to the citizens of Prescott that when they turn the water tap on, they get good pure water, that they've got sewers, that their roads are plowed, that their trash is picked up, so the basic services that a community provides are provided for. And then when we get rid of those items as the best or the highest priority, then I would get down to quality of life and the parks and recreation system, wonderful that we have here, that it helps to bring the tourist dollars in and it becomes a main attraction as a lower priority than number 1, which we've done, police and fire protection and basic services. Am I finished?
Yep.
Thank you.
Top five.
Top five.
Money's tight. It's like I'm on Jeopardy. Police, fire, water, put trash and sewer together, and roads. Top five priorities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Okay, Ellie.
Pretty much the same list. Public safety comes first, police, fire, along with the fire mitigation and providing defensible space for Prescott, since we're one of the top 5 areas in the country at risk for wildfires, as we know. Preserving water and sewer, protecting the infrastructure, our roads and streets, and also quality of life. The public trust is our lakes, streams, quality of water, recreational resources. That is what the public trust is about.
Thank you. Al?
Yeah, I could either say and repeat what was said before, or just group those 5 items into one, as in the basic services of police, fire, water, sewer, trash. That takes care of the 5, but let's say if that's 1, then we have the quality of life that's been mentioned. We need to ensure and force that into the future to be the best it can be. We have the employees to consider, because without the employees here that are doing a job that's expected of them, the city cannot run efficiently. We have the ability here and now to tell us, you the people, what it is that you want to see as the other options for the city in the expenditure of money. What is it that you want to see the city do? Where is the funds for that? Come forward and let us know.
Thank you, Ellen. Steve?
Well, I'd group a couple together. Police and fire, number 1. Water, sewer, number 2. Trash, number 3. Quality of life, meaning that's why people move here, because of the quality of life, clean and neat town. And number 5 would be employment and healthy growth as far as tourism and economics.
Great, thank you. Excellent answers. Thank you all very much. Okay, we have exactly 7 minutes left to finish up the 6 one-minute closing remarks. So I'm going to use 1 minute to say a huge thank you to all of you for running.
Yes.
Thank you. Most of you know I spent 4 years as a councilperson and vice mayor for Prescott, and I was the Chino Valley mayor for 6 years. And I can tell you firsthand that for those of you who have not served yet, it is an extremely rewarding job. It is quite an honor that your citizens put their faith and trust in you to do this. And it's a lot of work, which I'm sure you're finding out already. But more importantly, you and your families, you put yourselves out every day because you do have to make tough decisions. And not everybody is going to agree with your decisions 100% of the time. So for that, from our citizens and from myself, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing that, for standing up and willing to put your name and your life, your personal time too, out on the line. So thank you. With that, we're going to do 1 minute closing, and we're going to do something weird. I'm going to start here and work out. So which one of you two want to go first?
Ladies first.
Ladies first? Okay. There we go.
1 minute.
1 minute. 1 minute closing. You'll go second.
Serving on the council is a huge responsibility. It requires individuals with integrity, intelligence, the ability to have a vision for long-range planning for the future. It also requires someone who can deal with all the competing needs and demands for a very limited budget. We have to take in economic opportunity and growth. We have to focus on jobs. We have an unemployment rate of 8% and a very high poverty rate. We need to have future jobs for the youth in our community to keep them here. We need to partner with our business development for our future growth. But we also have to preserve the public trust in regard to waters, lakes, streams, and recreational facilities, which is why I'm running, is to support that venue.
Thank you, Alan.
Well, if I'm elected, I would like to give everybody a civics review. I keep hearing consensus, all-inclusive. If we had a committee and a meeting about every darn decision that happens at City Hall, we would never decide one thing. If I'm elected, we are based on a representative electoral body. The majority elects me. I'm not hiding what I am. Basic services, the pie is only so big. Let's take care of the basics, and when that little sliver that we all are fighting over, then we come together. I'll spend your money wisely. We'll come together with that little sliver and figure out what is going to serve Prescott's needs the best in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
There is the basic services we need to do, but that doesn't exclude us from getting the input from the public on how to perform those in a better way. It's not just a little sliver that's left over that you have to comment on. You have the right and responsibility to comment on everything that the city does. To me, that is the hallmark of what a representative government is, by listening to what the people have, and then you're making up your mind. And when you want to build consensus among the council members to come up with a compromise, you have to achieve that also. It's not just something where I'm right, everyone else is wrong, and won't even say the rest of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Ben?
Well, I look at it very simple. The kidding that I take on the council between my age, you'll never realize what I get. Other than that, I think that I put the time in both with my business career before I was volunteering for various commissions in Prescott. The time I spent on those committees, and then the time I spent on the council made me well qualified to serve another term as your councilman. And I want to thank you for coming today, and I look forward to your vote.
Thank you, Lynn.
Well, once again, I'll tell you I'm Steve Blair, and I would appreciate your vote. And I've been here for a while, and I really appreciate the opportunity that you put the faith in me to be your representative. If you vote for me again, and I'm lucky enough to be on council, I will do exactly that. I will take your trust in me and do the right thing for all of the people in this community, to benefit all the people in this community. I'm not running on a slate. I'm not selected by a slate. I'm running as Steve Blair. I've done a good job for this community in the past 12 years, and I'd appreciate your support.
Thank you, Steve. Last but not least.
I'm Jean Wilcox once again, and I am running because I'm passionate about government, being effective and responsive to people. I've worked long enough behind the scenes to know how it works, how it should work, and what can go wrong when it doesn't work. I would very much like to be part of a council that makes decisions in the open so the public can see how each individual councilor and the mayor think about particular issues. It's very difficult for us to give specifics as candidates because in the future there will be a myriad of issues that come before us. I think what you need to understand are our core values, our philosophy of government. And I strongly believe in a government that's open and accessible to people. And I'm not the king or the queen. I'm maybe a representative of the people, but it's very important, as Mr. DeBeal said, to be listening and to have an avenue for those creative ideas, those wonderful, experienced people in this community who could help run the government.
Thank you, Jane. All right, I would like to thank you all for coming and attending today. I encourage all of you to please stick around and come in and introduce yourselves to all of these candidates. If you have questions or didn't understand their answers, that's what they're here for. They want to get to know you, and you should get to know them. So I encourage you all to do that. So let's give a big, huge round of applause for all of the candidates, and Jackie, our timer. And thank you all very much for coming. Have a great evening and weekend.
Hi, Ben.
Good. How are you? Rock and roll. Good job, guys.